Okay. Welcome, everyone, to the Species on the Edge 2.0 info session. I am John Henry from EmpowerTrip LLP. My colleague, Dana Heist-Depew, and I are managing the contest this year. I will be your host for this session today. So we are privileged today to have biologists that work directly with endangered species, and this is a real honor to actually get some information from the people who are working with endangered species in New Jersey. And so I personally am looking forward to this as well. So, but before we begin with the introductions and the folks that are on the call today, um, just a few words about the contest itself. The Species on the Edge 2-point contest is designed for students to investigate and understand what is happening to endangered species in New Jersey and discover the reasons why they're in jeopardy. There's probably many reasons why they're in jeopardy, and we're going to probably find out a few of them today. It is a way for you, the students, um, to actually learn about New Jersey's ecosystems, and it's also a way for students to learn how to identify the problems, create public awareness, and create real-world solutions um, to what is so that the issues that are going on. This challenge and contest allows, or well, we're calling it a challenge, but it's technically a contest for students because they are being judged on the submissions of their videos. Uh, but it does allow students to have the flexibility to select from several scenarios which are in the contest kit and assume the role of professionals who will contribute to protecting endangered species. All of the information for the contest can be found in the Conserve Wildlife Foundation of New Jersey website. So let's just jump right in. So if we could just each and every one of you just introduce yourself and just give a short background of what you do in the field as a biologist. So just anybody want to go first? Just make
I'll,
sure you
I'll go
unmute.
first. My name's Todd Pover. I'm a senior wildlife biologist for Conserve Wildlife Foundation, and my specialty is beach nesting birds. And in New Jersey, the species that are in that list are piping plover, least tern, and black skimmer. And as the name suggests, they literally lay their eggs right out on the beach and not necessarily just at kind of protected wildlife areas. They're out on our public beaches, and right there you can see that if the beaches have a lot of people, they're at risk for that reason. And so that's part of one of the main things we do with this job is try to set up protection to protect them from various levels of human disturbance on the beach.
Okay, great. Thank you. Leah?
Hi, I'm Leah Wells. I'm a wildlife biologist with CWF. I mainly work with our bat species. So for New Jersey, we have a couple of endangered species. We have the tricolored bat, the northern long-eared bat, the Indiana bat, and the eastern small-footed bat. I also work with some rare turtle species like bog turtles, and sometimes help out with spotted turtle work. And I also manage the amphibian crossing as well.
Hmm, thank you. Harrison?
Hi, I'm Harrison Hefting. I'm a wildlife biologist with Conserve Wildlife Foundation. I work with a bunch of different species, but primarily turtles and birds, working with spotted turtle, as well as different bird species like forest birds and grassland birds. For example, the upland sandpiper, which is endangered in New Jersey, and just doing a lot of monitoring their populations and research into how they're in interacting with their habitats.
Great, thank you. Ben?
Hey, Ben Worst. I'm a senior wildlife biologist. I mainly work with coastal raptors in New Jersey, many of those endangered or threatened, or once endangered or threatened. So that includes, monitoring and management of the species, to monitor the overall health of the populations. And I also do work with terrapins and aquatic turtle that live along the coast of New Jersey.
Okay, great. Larissa?
Hi, my name is Larissa Smith. I'm a wildlife biologist One of the main species I work with is the bald eagle, which is no longer a listed species, but I also work with eastern tiger salamanders down in South Jersey, and they are a New Jersey endangered species. And I also work with the Shorebird project along the Delaware Bay, which is going to be starting soon. And I work with volunteers who help to protect the birds, and several of them, including the red knot, are a listed species.
Great, thank you. And I believe we have our AI companion here, Emmy.
That's me, not the AI, but the AI's companion, I guess.
I'm
Hi,
getting
my name is Emmy Casper. I'm a wildlife biologist with CWF. I primarily work with a species called the American oyster catcher, which is not an endangered species in New Jersey. It's a species of special concern, but it's another beach nesting bird and also a marsh nesting bird. I do have experience working with piping plovers, black skimmers, and least terns, which are the endangered beach nesting birds, primarily research and monitoring work. And then I do have projects that also involve habitat restoration for marsh nesting species of birds, including the black rail, which is endangered in New Jersey.
Mm. Great, thank you. I don't think we missed anybody, right? Everybody went? Introductions? So, since we don't have any students on today, and this is recorded, it's still a very valuable session here for us. So, and as you know, we would love to have more students go into the biologist field and actually to help contribute to endangered species, not only in New Jersey, but probably nationally or anywhere for that matter around the globe. So, a quick question for you is what got you into this in the first place? Like, what was your interest in this? And please feel free to include like, what path you took to go to school or what it took to do that, maybe some internships, who you worked with in the past.
Okay, probably be useful if we just go in the same order to make it easy. So I'll go
Okay.
first, and I'm a little hesitant to go first because I'm probably the most unorthodox path. I am a career changer. Started as a journalism student and switched over later. Started a journalism career. It wasn't quite as fulfilling as I had thought, and so I decided to switch gears. I'd always been interested in the environment. So I think there's a couple of lessons though still in my path, even though it's not the normal path and it's the harder path in this field. But one, I wanted to say, like, career change is possible because, you're making decisions as a young person, and sometimes that's scary, but, it doesn't have to be final. You have time in your life to, maybe change gears. But my main path for getting into it in a formal way was I began volunteering since I didn't initially have the background, and began volunteering on projects to get my name in the door and just to see if I liked it. And so for me that was successful. And I'll just add that most of those entry level positions we have in this career have either started as volunteers or doing a seasonal work part-time during the field season. So that's what I'd like to say.
And Todd, thank you for sharing that. But I like how you change careers, right? That's real world.
Yeah.
Like some of the students might be going in one direction and then get interested in something else. So it's real world. That's good. Well, thank you.
All right, I'll go next. I started volunteering before college at a local wildlife refuge near my house. But then I went to school, and I originally went to school for animal science at UConn, and then I changed my major and transferred to Rutgers and got my bachelor's in ecology, evolution, and natural resources. I first started working with bats at my junior year with one of my professors, and I fell in love with it. And then after that, I started working part-time for Conserve, and I also worked other side jobs as like throughout the years before I came full-time. So I worked with Audubon, I've worked with a wildlife mitigation place, and then I also worked with the state doing rattlesnake work. So I think all those experiences helped like balance me out, but I've always stuck with bats, and turtles is kind of a new thing that one of our coworkers left, and I live up close to where all the turtles are, and I fell in love with that as well. Um, but yeah, I've just always taken every opportunity I could, just to really see what you like to do. And yeah, that's kind of my story.
Good, thank you. Next up.
Yeah, so I always thought I wanted to be a marine biologist growing up, and that's what I went to school for. And then about halfway through college, I kind of realized I really liked the wildlife biology aspect. And I made a switch of like every class I took was pretty much a wildlife biology class from that point on. And I tried to work with as many grad students as I could on wildlife work. And then I took internships, seasonal positions. I worked with the Wetlands Institute here in New Jersey, seasonal positions. I even worked for a wildlife tech company for a little bit, and that kind of solidified in my head that I wanted to be doing field work instead of being stuck in an office for the entirety of the year. So, um, yeah, I did that, and then eventually I landed this job with CWF.
Great, thank you.
I think I'm next. I've always loved animals. Not just wildlife. I knew I was going to end up working with animals at some point in my life. I went to school for environmental studies, and um, I didn't actually get into this field until my late 20s. I did a lot of traveling. I lived in California, lived in Mexico. Um, and wherever I was volunteering with different organizations, a lot of times at parks near where I was living. And when I came back to New Jersey, I got my first seasonal job with the beach nesting project. And I did that for 2 years and uh, did some other internships and then got hired on with Conserve Wildlife Foundation.
Great, thank you. All right, who's
So
up next?
I went to
Okay.
school in Maine after getting my associates in New Jersey at Ocean County College. And there I got a degree in environmental science with emphasis in wildlife conservation. And I really didn't know what I was going to do when I was in, community college. So I took a variety of different courses. One of them was environmental science, which really spawned, my fascination with learning more about, the outdoors. I knew that I wanted to work outside. I didn't necessarily know I'd be working with wildlife when I was in college. But I grew up in a family with animals. My father was a veterinarian and cared for injured wildlife all the time. So he was constantly bringing them home. I worked for my father as well in his veterinary office. And yeah, so or when I was still in school, I guess I did volunteer once through an internship at my college where I worked out west for a summer in North Dakota. And, I did some other volunteering up in Maine at different national wildlife refuges. So the volunteering aspect, as you can tell, is pretty important, just to get out there and network in the field and get that experience, whether you're paid or not. And then, yeah, eventually, moved back to New Jersey and got a job for the state in the endangered species program, working with a variety of different species, from little southern gray tree frogs and red knots and horseshoe crabs. And then, evolved into other work with raptors, which, if I had a choice, who wouldn't want to work with raptors, right? So it's kind of one of those dream jobs, that just kind of falls in your lap. And I feel very privileged to be where I am.
That sounds great. And it's not always about the money. And I think every one of you said something about the volunteerism. So on your way up to where you are now, there was always volunteerism involved in that. And that's a good thing. I think that's great for everybody to get involved and contribute in that way. And I think last but not least, Emmy.
So for me, like a lot of people here, I knew that I wanted to work with animals or wildlife ever since I was a kid. Like Harrison, I wanted to be a marine biologist because I went to a marine science day camp every year until I was like 13 and then was a camp counselor for that day camp. So I was obsessed with marine science. I took kind of a detour when I went to college. I went to school in New York City, and my major was just biological sciences. So it leaned really heavy on cellular biology and molecular biology. And if I could do anything over again, I would probably consider programs that are more focused on wildlife biology specifically to get more relevant coursework. But that said, it did work out. I stayed in my college for my master's, so I completed my master's thesis on um, shorebird diet in Jamaica Bay, New York City, and I analyzed DNA. So I did a lot of lab work, but I knew I wanted to be more in the field. So my first job right out of grad school was actually working for Todd as a seasonal beach nesting bird technician, where I completely fell in love with that aspect of the job. Did that for a couple seasons and then ended up full time with CWF, and getting to do a bunch of new things, learning new skills, and getting new experiences with beach nesting birds.
Oh, great. So you mentioned lab work and then field work. So how much of your time was spent in the lab versus in the field?
So for me personally, I would spend just a couple days out in the field collecting shorebird poop, and then I would spend a lot more time in the lab extracting the DNA from that poop and then sequencing the DNA and processing it and using computer programs to actually figure out what the DNA belonged to. So it was like 90% computer work and lab work and not so much field work,
But necessary work and
but
probably
necessary.
both interesting to do.
It's fun to extract DNA and do all that stuff, but I
Yeah.
much prefer
So,
being out in the field.
right. I mean, being in the field is probably really fun, right? And fun and important work because you're, on site, but you have to do the lab work actually to see what's going on, from the
Mhm.
technology from perspective. So that's great. So, um, in terms of advice, what would you give to the students to help them with this challenge? Like, is there anything that jumps out, anything that, and it could just be one thing or it could be several things. It's just your choice. And we'll
I
go in the
can go.
same
I
orders.
helped judge last year, or the year before. I would say just make sure you read the instructions and look at the criteria of everything. I feel like some people did really well, but didn't follow the instructions completely, or like read the rubric perfectly, and so they were missing points on certain aspects of the grading.
Good advice.
Yeah, and I would say trying to find the balance between getting the facts right and being a little creative. I think create. We want it to be right, correct, and strong, like as a baseline. But if there's a little bit of creative touch or to it, I think that catches attention. And so, especially in a social media environment we live in today, that's the kind of thing that stands out. So I think that those kind of videos are nice. I think that's pretty much it for me.
Yeah, it's important. I'm glad you mentioned that, the creativity. And that's why we recommend in this contest that they go into it as a team. So someone on their team might be more creative that can handle some of that, while someone else might be handling the more detailed research work, making sure the facts are correct. So that's important.
And I just want to say, because I got to judge someone last year, to make sure that they don't just, if they're, say they're doing tiger salamanders, they don't just take for facts the first thing that they read, that they do a little research, they go to several different sites, to make sure that what they're getting is correct.
Mm, again, another good point. Anyone else? Okay, those are good points. So can you share what may have been a most or your most memorable moment in the field or in the lab, or maybe was it just one thing, or was it just some component of the job that you love more than others?
Okay, I'll go. So I'm going on 30 plus years, so picking a single moment is pretty tough. Have to admit, I have been lucky enough to be able to, for the piping plovers, not only study them here in New Jersey, but a large number of the ones on the Atlantic coast of the U.S., winter in the Bahamas. So I've been able to do, or I was able for a number of years to also go down there, not only to study them, but to do education there because in the Bahamas, they knew very little about shorebirds or the plovers. So that was very rewarding. And I think that just ties in, like the overall theme, not necessarily one moment or the other, but just the kind of cumulative reward you feel about protecting species and trying to help them recover is really keeps me going.
Hmm. Nice.
I'll share a recent memory. So for most of our bat species in New Jersey, all the ones that are cave hibernating, which are six of them, face a fungus called white nose syndrome, and that happened in around 2007, and it caused like 90 to 98% population decline. But every year I go out and monitor known bat roosts, specifically little brown bat roosts, and over the past couple of years, a lot of their numbers were remain pretty low and pretty steady. But last year, I think 5 out of my 6 sites, we had a dramatic increase in our bat numbers, whether that be just, high, the mortality rate for the young, like they had good survival, or more bats are just moving into those areas. But it was really awesome to see that the numbers increased at so many of the sites that I monitor.
So you said that what was the thing that actually caused their decline
It's called
again?
white nose syndrome. It's a fungal pathogen that's found in caves. It was brought over in 2007 by, we think, cavers from Europe. And it's basically wiped out our bat populations, and it's moving all throughout the country as well.
That sounds like it's very uncommon, or is that common in other parts of the
Common
world?
now.
Common now?
Yeah, for our bats. But yeah, I think it evolved with the bats over in Europe, but for our bat species, it was a new introduced pathogen, so it wiped them out. They didn't have any protections for it.
Now, does that have anything to do with climate change?
No, not necessarily.
Not directly?
I think if anything, climate change in a weird way would help. The fungus likes really cold, damp, dark caves. So I guess if the caves got warmer, there'd be less,
Mm,
fungus in the cave, but then the bats might, not necessarily hibernate in them anymore either.
mm. Okay, great. Thanks for that. Anyone else?
I have many memories that I could go through. I think it's a accumulation of a lot of memories that really make it worth it and show you that what you're doing is so valuable. I hope I'm gonna give one. I hope I'm not stealing this from Emmy, but when I was a technician under her on the Delaware Bay Oyster Catcher project, we had a pretty rough season monitoring their productivity. They were getting all the eggs and the chicks were getting just eaten up or flooded out. And we had this one family of oyster catchers that I really came to love, and they had a chick that fledged, and we were able to band that chick, and we got to name him Rudy. And it's just kind of a reminder that, even in the face of all these challenges, the wildlife's still trying. They're still trying to persist, and you know, you just gotta do your best to help them with what they're trying to do.
Good, thank you.
I'll piggyback off of Harrison's point because what I was gonna say is kind of connected to bird banding, which is the process of equipping a bird with either a metal band or a plastic band, and some of these bands are able to be read in the field. So with oyster catchers, they have codes on them that you can track individuals over time. And the first time I joined biologist on a banding expedition to band piping plovers and or oyster catchers. That was extremely meaningful for me as someone who was monitoring the birds. Because I mean, not that we're advocating for getting birds in the hand, but you have to do it to equip the bands. But holding the species that you're trying to protect and realizing how small it is, in the grand scheme of things, even when you're holding it, it was just such a meaningful experience. And putting bands on it and then being able to track its success throughout its life and follow it and see if it has babies in the future, and how long it lives, you feel very connected to those birds and other species that got tagged. And it makes things a lot more meaningful. Like for Harrison, the roysters, they're still nesting on the Delaware Bay. And I mean, they haven't been successful yet this year, but we're hoping for another chick to add to their family. So it's really cool being able to band birds and other animals and track them throughout their lives.
Mm. Yeah, that's great. Anyone else?
I mean, I, like Todd, have, worked with wildlife for many years, so there's lots of stories and memories, but some of the impactful things that, I really look forward to are, working with the public, in the field especially, or engaging them in our work. It's something that, you're not taught in college or anything. And when you work with an endangered or threatened species, you find out it's really vital, especially with species that live in very close proximity to many residential areas, that it's just a way of raising awareness for the species and building in our movement to get more people to make important choices in their lives that affect many different things outside of their houses. So I think that that's really one of the most important things. And even going on the banding thing here too, yeah, when last was it 2 years ago? I was banding at a nest with some kids, and one of them, was up there with me, and he was like, "This is the best day of my life." That's what he said. When he had a view of young ospreys in their nest. And it's something I think that he will, take with him and never forget about. Just like I never forgot about it as well, too. So.
Yeah, that's great. That's important, the field experience for the students. They're in class or in school all day and they get to do a hands-on, place-based, experience. And it could be that one thing that changes their direction and how they think and how they act. Yeah, it's great. Anyone else? That it? So Ben, I wanted to follow up on what you just said about, the
Yep.
dealing with the public, right? And I think that's important because part of this challenge, right, this contest is for them to be advocates, discover something, problem solve, brainstorm, and then research, and then get the word out. So, is there anything specific that any one of you can share that can help the students get the word out? Whether it's, I mean, yes, it's for this contest itself, but what could they do to get the word out to make people more aware of what's going on?
Yeah, I mean, nowadays I feel like having two teenagers myself, social media is, really one of the biggest ways that, they can, share their thoughts and opinions and facts about different species in New Jersey that are rare, but also, talking with their fellow students and their friends and their family, are other important aspects of all of this. It's not just what you see on a screen, then it's also what you do and take from it too. I think that's also really important, the like I kind of said, like the choices you make afterwards.
Mhm.
Yeah, I remember, going far back, but when I was younger, one of the first things I did environmentally was organize a stream cleanup. So, they could also band together and not just a stream cleanup, but that's just an example, like do some kind of environmental activity at the school or in a club, part of a club, that kind of thing, and maybe try to get some publicity for it to further get the word out. That could be another way to do it. And be participating themselves in the process too.
Mm, good
Yeah, I
point.
just want to what Todd just said, even if it's not, like directly say affecting an endangered or threatened species, what Todd just said, that stream cleanup is indirectly affecting all wildlife because, I mean, all of us can show pictures of wildlife that has been tangled in fishing line, in plastic bags, and different, things that have caused all of our species, I'm sure. Um, we all have had that happen. So, just something as simple as that, and I think it is very important for them.
Yeah, good point.
I have maybe a little more abstract uh thing here, but I would say if you have the excitement and the curiosity, like just let that shine, like don't hold that back. Like my friends might think I'm a little weird because I talk about wildlife all the time, but it sticks to them eventually, and people kind of gravitate towards that. People are naturally curious, and they will become curious over time, even if it's like to your friends or your family. Like, yeah, just don't hold it back. Don't feel like it's weird to talk about it or be excited about it. Just kind of let that shine.
That's a really good point. Live your passion, right? Show your authenticity and your care for what you do. And that's good. Maybe because some students might be afraid to actually get involved in that because they're being judged, perhaps, and they should not fear that. If they're interested in it and they like it, they should do it. I mean, in the town that I'm in, they do, cleanups. They do garbage pickups in streams and in the woods and local places. We have a green team, a sustainability team, an environmental commission that students can get involved in. So there's a lot of ways that they could get involved in it indirectly, as you said. And I like that because it might not be directly, but the indirect, just so they get involved and they can contribute in a positive way to their local community. And probably in that process, they're going to run into people, that networking that they can have, and they're going to learn more about the connections to the wildlife and to the ecosystems that the wildlife live in. So yeah, these are all really good points that you're all mentioning. So that's great. Anybody else have anything on that topic? All right. So before we wrap this up on one final really question, it's going to be an open-ended question. Is there any final parting words that you would like to share with the students regarding specifically to this challenge? You may have
Um,
mentioned it already, but if there's something else that comes to mind.
yeah, so I think, all of us here, we're working with different species for the most part, but the thing that kind of like brings us all together, our goal is all the same, and that's with rare or endangered species, it's recovery of the species is what we're working for. And so really this contest is a part of that process. It's, like can be part of the process. So I just think the framing, like when you're thinking about your project, think about it. That's the ultimate goal. To recover the species, that's what we're looking. So we want facts, we want creativity, we want your ideas, but it should be sort of like the ultimate goal is recovery of endangered species.
Mm,
I would say maybe look at examples in history that show success of recovered species and draw inspiration from that. You could look at, bald eagle success in New Jersey as an example and just, research things around the country or in New Jersey, things
mm.
that worked, and maybe there's something that, sparks an interest for you and inspires you regarding a species that's still endangered in New Jersey.
Yeah, those are really good points because why reinvent the wheel, right? If somebody has success, could do something similar. Anyone else?
I would say definitely on the creativity aspect. I don't know if this was last year's thing and you've switched it up, but I think every single submission last year was like a a news press release. Every single student did that. Is that the same thing this year? Like, I'm pretty sure they have different options, right? They don't have to.
They
Yeah,
do,
okay.
but one of them was to be like a journalist, and
Yeah,
they
I think
cracked
every
that into
single
right.
submission was that.
Mhm.
So
Yeah,
maybe
they had
just,
several options, and they had flexibility to choose which
yeah,
scenario they wanted to get involved in. Yes, it's still the
yeah.
same.
Okay, yeah, maybe just trying something else.
Yeah, good. Thank you. Anyone else? If not, I have another question that I just thought of as we were speaking. So, which species in New Jersey is the most in danger and why? May, you know,
Um,
not sure if,
I'll take my thought on that. I'm hoping that piping plover doesn't become the rarest, although right now, like we're really struggling a little, but probably black rail could be one of the candidate. It, and it's a secretive marsh bird, so it's also hard to like do surveys of them, and we don't really have great data on their presence, but it's pretty clear that there's not many of them, and they're in serious decline. So I don't know. I like to hear what some of the other folks think as well.
I was just gonna say I agree with you that black rail would probably be the most endangered in my opinion.
Yeah, I think it's
And
pretty up there too.
the habitat, even if the birds are hard to detect, their habitat isn't, and their habitat is disappearing as well because they're a high marsh specialist species. And with sea level rise and, subsidence, that marsh is just being converted into low marsh and they're losing ground, basically.
Mm.
So them and salt marsh sparrow is kind of in the same boat as them, but I don't think salt marsh sparrows are quite at that point yet. They have more recovery potential, in my opinion, but
Mm.
I'll throw a bog turtle in there as well. They're a hard species to monitor, and their populations are only found in, a section in the north and a section in the south. And their habitat is also, becoming compromised and overgrown. And I mean, they live a long time, so you'll still see a lot of older turtles, but you won't see as many new hatchlings and different age
Mm.
species when you go out there and survey for them.
And you said that they're difficult to monitor.
Yeah, they like to bury deep in the mud, so um, people go out in the spring and do these surveys visually, and you'll get a handful, but there could be more. There's being different ways to monitor them now, but it's still a really hard species just to find.
I know technology is involved in the monitoring process. Not yet.
We have some camera traps, but it's
Mm.
placing them in the right spot and doing all that stuff as well. So it's just challenging.
Mm.
One of the common things about all those species we've been mentioning, and it's not a coincidence, is they're kind of habitat specialists. They need very specific habitats. There are other species that, kind of have a little broader tolerance for habitat, and unfortunately that goes to this whole issue that we're focused on the animals in our discussion, but really at the end of the day, a lot of it boils back down to the habitats. And if the habitats are, under siege or minimized, we've lost a lot of marsh habitat. We lost a lot of suitable beach habitat for some of those birds. That at the end of the day is something, and we do actually spend a lot of time on the habitat. We just didn't have time to talk about it as much today.
Yeah, well, again, that's an excellent point because, the ecosystems, if it's depleted or changing, and some of them are sensitive to, which was brought up here, that's extremely important. I always like to focus on the why they're disappearing or why they're endangered. And if it's the ecosystems, then the students can actually take that further is to figure out why something is happening in this particular part of the state. And I think that would be helpful. And that could also be part of their awareness campaign in their presentation and their submission. So, yeah, all good points that you're bringing up. Does anyone else have anything else to share before we end this info session? If not, then I want to thank the students or whoever else will view this in the future because this will be available on the YouTube channel. on the Conserve Wildlife Foundation of New Jersey. So everybody on the call today, I want to thank each and every one of you. I thought they were excellent answers, excellent information, and I think this is going to benefit the students in this contest and challenge enormously. So I want to thank everybody. So everybody take care. Be well.
Thank you.
Thanks, John.
Thank you very much.
Bye, everyone.